All right, we are back for hopefully the fourth and final video. So after the last video, I left you guys with going and putting your either your deckable light on here or your foam. If you're using foam, making sure it's cut out of the four corners as well as the four corners of our side pieces like so. That is just going to help us reduce bulk within those seams when it comes to doing top stitching and the final seams and everything like that. Now, one thing I didn't show you, and I left one edge undone, as I said, if you decided to do it this way, like how I left my foam larger, I've already gone and trimmed it all up here, and you can see the difference. I'll show you here on this piece here. So, see how thick the foam is there compared to, say, this side piece where it's really thin? So the way I did that and why we leave this a little bit bigger is so you have something to grab onto and you can pull that foam back and away. You kind of put your scissors on their side like so, and then just trimming the foam, you can get nice and close to that stitching, making that foam that's in that seam almost non-existent, like super, super flat. And I do this even with my industrial. This is a really great foam trick. See, look how thin it is now compared to what it was. So a really, really great foam trick just to reduce that bulk. So I've done that on all of these pieces. The next prep step we want to do is we want to take these side pieces. We want to find our top and bottom centers. Just prepping these for when we're ready to add them to the main body. And then what we're going to do is on the bottom corners, we are going to cut out a 3/8 of an inch block just out of the bottom corners. So I'm going to go ahead and draw in 3/8 of an inch just on the bottom corners. Just like so. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut those blocks out. The way the bottom and these sides go together on this bag are so very unique and really, really cool. So this is what we end up having, like so. Go ahead and do that with the other one as well, and then we can set those aside for now.
I'm not sure.
Oh my goodness. She's going rogue again, guys. Okay, and then again, just on the bottom, 3/8 of an inch boxes. And set those aside for now. We will be revisiting these momentarily. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to work on our strap connectors as well as our magnetic snaps and the rest of our turn locks. So let's do our strap connectors first. So you want to grab your strap connector pieces. So the 4 of them. These aren't the crossbody strap connectors. These are the 4 main handle connectors. And we've already drawn a center line down the middle when we cut these out. I'm going to use tape. You're more than welcome to use clips if you prefer. Tape down the center line of all of these, and then we're going to fold those long edges to that center line. For all 4. And that roll of tape is finished. Chuck that in the garbage. I gotta get more of that tape from Galaxy. Almost out. Okay, then we're going to take these to the machine and we're going to top stitch down all the folded edges for all 4 pieces. Alrighty. Okay, so I'm going to chain stitch these. The top stitching stitch length. I'm just going to go across the short edge of one just so I don't have to break my thread, and then go up the opposite side of them all. Those all apart. All right, let's get on to these hidden connectors. Okay, so here we go. So on the wrong sides of these, we want to mark about where the halfway mark is. So I'm just going to take my tiny leather pen and on the wrong side, mark approximately the middle. Okay, let's set those aside for a moment and bring out our main piece here. So this is the one we've already gone ahead and we did those slits in there, but we need it to go through the interfacing as well. So if you've used a Decavol light here, you would just go ahead and do the same slit, just kind of go through and make sure it goes all the way through for that 1-inch slit. I'm just cutting through, you can see I'm cutting through my foam here. For the foam, we're going to do a little bit more because we want to remove some of that foam bulk for when we do the hidden connector. Okay, so for those doing foam, what you're going to do is you're just going to cut the foam away around that slit. So I'm just kind of pulling the foam away from the exterior and sticking my scissors in. This does not have to be pretty. We just want to expose around that slit, like so. So you can see my slit, my connector right there. You want to do that for all 4 of them. Again, it doesn't have to look pretty. Nobody's going to see it. We just want to be able to have a little bit around those little slits. Again, being careful not to cut your exterior, just the foam. I don't know if I cut this one wide enough. We will find out. Well, Dexter says hi. I did not. I can already see that when I went and I did my slit on this exterior, I didn't go in with my scissor and cut it right to the line. So I'm just going to go and fix that because we want that to be 1 inch. Okay. Yay. Alrighty. So hidden connectors. What we're going to do first off, we're going to take this to the machine. We're going to do all 4 at once. You're going to take the connector wrong side up and we're going to put it in through that slit to that halfway mark line that we just made. So when we get to that halfway mark line right there, I'm going to put my zipper foot on, and this is very important. So above the slit, so you can see where my vinyl is open right here, we're going to go and stitch this connector in place 1/8 of an inch away from that slit. You do not want to go under the slit or you're closing off the connector. We just want to attach this connector right now. You want to make sure you're not going past the connector, so you're going to kind of sew in between pretty much our top stitch lines there. And we're going to go back stitch here, go across and back stitch, and we're going to do that for all 4. So I'm actually going to put these all in place right now, and then we will go and do them all at the machine. So again, the wrong side up, going through those slits to that line on all 4. And I can see I didn't cut that one quite big enough yet, so I'll just go a little bit further. So these should be a snug or perfect fit through that slit. A little snug is sometimes a little better because you'll see when we do the next step how it's going to pull the vinyl in and hide that raw edge. If it doesn't hide the raw edge, it's not a big deal because this is non-fraying fabric. Okay, get in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Again, we're going to go right above that slit and stitch these in place. So let's go do that. All right. So I am going to change into my right zipper foot. Just actually, is this the one I want? Yeah. This zipper foot is also going to help us get nice and close to the connector. Actually, I'm going to do my left zipper foot, I think. Yeah. Okay, I'll put it to a stitch length. And again, we are just sewing just above that slit. So I'm going to put my needle down, and you don't want to go past the connector because you don't want it to show on the exterior. It's all about being hidden here. So back stitch, across to the other side. Again, making sure your connector is wrong side up. That's one done. And if you've done that correctly, you should be able to open up that slit still with your finger. And do that for the other 3. Making sure it's nice and straight in there. That's 2. And the last one. Oops. Okay, let's go back to the table. I'll show you the next step, and then we'll come back to the machine. Come on. Okay, now we're going to make some magic happen. So you have your thing. You can see how we can still see inside the slit there. Now we're going to take our rectangular ring and we're going to put it on the end. And then we're going to take the other end and we are going to put it through that slit. I hope I can show this okay. And we want it to be a little bit tight. If it's a little bit tight, just kind of get it in there. If you can't get it in, you can always cut it a little bit bigger. The reason we want it tight, I'm going to try to show this, is when we go to pull this end through, it's going to fold that raw edge. Watch the vinyl. It's going to pull it under and fold that raw edge under. See? You can't see the raw edge. And then we're going to go and top stitch that because it's pulled a little bit of a seam allowance down as we've pulled this under. And we're just going to top stitch, back stitch, across and back stitch. And that is going to secure that hidden connector in place. If there's a raw edge showing there, it's not going to matter. You're not going to notice it, but you can kind of see when you pull it through, when it's a little bit tight, it gives a folded edge there. So we're going to do the same for all four. I'm going to take these rectangular rings over there and we're going to do it all at the machine and stitch across there. You don't want to go too far past the connector because you don't want it to be going this way. You just want it to go right across for about that inch to secure that connector in place. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is another reason why I put on the left zipper foot, because I can get nice and close to that hardware to be nice and close to that seam to make sure that folded edge stays down. So, and you can also pull your threads long and tie off in the back, but for hidden connectors, I find I like to back stitch just to make sure they are secure. So I have it just at that folded edge. Sewing below where the slit was now and across. And I'm using a top stitching length as well. Oopsies. And back stitch again. And look, it's secured it in place good. This is what it looks like on the opposite side. And we're going to do the same with the other three. Take my connector, slide it into the slit, pull it through so it makes that nice fold, pull it nice and tight, and sew in place. So it's a little different than how she does it in the pattern, but this is how I like to do my hidden connectors. Almost the same as the connector, or as the pattern, just slightly different. And you can see that's why we cut the foam away, just so we have a little less thickness as we're sewing those through. And it would be really hard to achieve this nice fold if the foam was all in that seam too. So another reason to cut it out of those. Two more. And there. And last one. Get in there. I need to go one more. And my thread broke. Darn it. Okay. It's all good. Let's gray thread is cheaper thread that I got off of Amazon. I need to buy more gray thread, but I have so much of this one, I've got to use it up first. It just seems to sometimes fray and break, but it's all good. I didn't get my back stitch in there, so I'll just go back in and do that back stitch. Easy peasy. And then you can go through and catch those little ends with a lighter if you're using a bonded thread. Melt it away so it stays in place. Gets rid of all those little frays. Be careful not to burn your vinyl. Just takes care of those little wispies. Okay. Okay, so now the last thing to do with these connectors, if you want to put rivets in, I do want to put rivets in just to stabilize them a little bit more. So I'm just going to eyeball it, and just below that top stitch line, like 1/4 of an inch down or so, 1/2 inch down, I'm just going to make some marks with my pen, my candy leather pen that erases, for the placement of my rivets for all 4. Kind of in the middle. And I'm going to install those. I'm also going to back my rivets with the scrap of heavy stabilizer just to make sure the fabric doesn't stretches and that my rivets will be staying in place. Just for in case, right? Okay, I think I can use medium rivets. We will see. It depends on how thick my vinyl is here. So let's start with one. So we're going through all of the connectors. Oh yeah, medium rivet is fine. So we've gone through both parts of the connector. I'm going to put a piece of deckable heavy scrap right there. Put on my cap. And then set it in place. And I'm going to do that with the other 3 as well. Side done. I'm just going to put these in. Last one. Okay. Good so far. So that's what it looks like on the wrong side and on the right side. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to do the female side of our magnetic snaps. So what I like to do to make sure they match up good is I take just an erasable pen, and the nubbin part of the male snap we have installed already, I'm just going to saturate it in the ink that disappears. Hopefully this shows up because my fabric is pink. This one. Oh, that one's going really good. Okay, and then if all goes well, when we close this and we push on those magnetic snaps, it'll transfer. Of course I can't see it, I gotta use a white pen. It'll transfer the markings, you can see this one, to our fabric. This one's right on a pink flower, so of course I can't see it. So I will use my white pen. Where'd you go? Hopefully this one will appear better. There it is, right there. Right here. Where's my white pen? Right there. And right at those marks that we transferred over, so can you see them? There's one there and one there. That is where we're going to put our female snaps, and they will line up perfect. So go ahead and install those as per your manufacturer's instructions, making sure to back them with scraps of heavy stabilizer as well. Again, I'm using a pink. It's really hard to see. Okay. So we will be going through the foam and everything. You may have to pull your connector out of the way. I'm actually going to cut my connector a little bit. You can trim them up if you want, just so they're out of the way of where I'm going to be putting them. One side. Okay, this one in. I pushed my prongs to the center. I don't think there really is a wrong way. I've never had issues with doing it towards the center. I like to use a mallet because then I know that they're good and tight. That one's already clicked into place. See, perfect. Okay, let's do the other one. This up a little bit. And having the foam there is also giving this magnetic snap some extra, an extra something to grab onto, because this part will be opened and closed quite a bit. There's my prongs. There they are. Quite get through the foam there, but I can see it through the foam, so there we go. We're almost done all the tedious stuff. Yay! All right, you can see how those snaps line up perfectly. These ones are really strong. I'm also going to take some duct tape and put them on the prongs of that just so they don't rub against the lining later on. And to just give them more strength and security. Keep that out because I'm going to need it again. All right, so that's what we have so far. We got the magnetic snaps there. Now we have to do the male side of our turn lock. So click it into the snaps, and I'm just going to eyeball it. So I'm going to eyeball where about the center of my hole is here, and that is going to be my guide for installing the male part. So that looks about right. Right there. Okay. So that there is my center for installing your turn lock. So everybody's turn locks are probably the different sizes. So install them as per your manufacturer's instructions. Okay, so I'm going to line up my center and install this. Make sure I do the right width for the prongs, nice and straight. I'm just using my washer to make my slip marks. Once again, taking my X-Acto knife and installing that. You could also do a magnetic snap here if you didn't want to do a turn lock. I'm sure that would be fine. I'm also going to make sure I'm backing it with a fairly large piece of scrap. Do I have one long enough? Not one big enough. That one might be okay. Yep. Well, not to cut your fingers if you're doing it the way I am. I don't necessarily do things the safest way, I guess. You can see it's going to line up perfect. These are a little harder to install, I find. Okay. And I'm actually just going to take the rubber end of my mallet. I still got my tape part on there, protecting that to make sure this is nice and tight. Perfectly centered. It's in there good. Take that protective paper off now. And put duct tape on the back of those prongs as well. That's a little bit much. There we go. And that is the main panel with hardware and everything all installed. Okay, a little bit more hardware to do. We're going to pull out our side pieces and our crossbody strap connectors now. Now you could definitely do these as hidden connectors, doing it the same way. I'm going to do it in just like the pattern. And once again, we have our center lines on those connectors. I'm going to use tape to secure them. And we do these a little different than the prep for the other connectors. Putting some of this up here. Got a new rotary cutter. I bought the Olfa pink version. My Amazon one that I bought for super cheap just did not hold up. Okay, then fold the long edges into that center line. Okay, and then I'm going to measure down. How much do I want to measure down? On the wrong side, approximately, how much do I want to do? Yeah, measure down about 1 3/4 of an inch from the top on the wrong side and draw a line. And 3/4, 1 3/4. Okay. And again, I like to use tape here. You can use clips to hold it in place, but honestly, for this, it really does help to use tape. You can keep it outside of the seam allowances in the centers, which helps. And I'm just going to put tape kind of over top of where that line we just drew was. We're going to grab our D-ring. And from that top edge, we're going to put the D-ring on. And you're going to fold that edge down to that line like so. And then you're going to take the opposite edge and fold it up like this. So this is what we got. Got it all folded wrong sides together. We're going to do the same with the other one. My other D-ring. Where are you? Oh, there you are. I'm selling your packaging. Oops, that came apart. That's okay. We'll get that in a moment. Put your D-ring on. Pull to that line. Fold it up. And then take small pieces of double-sided tape again and put it over top of that. And this is going to help us hold it in place on our sides while we sew it in place, as well as hold those edges that we just taped up together like so. We just gotta look at the pattern to see how far down we are installing these. So we are on page 25. Yes, page 25, step 8. So we've already marked our top and bottom centers of these, and we want to measure down nice and centered. So I know that's my center mark, so I like to use my 1-inch one here because I can put it nice and centered with that top mark. Otherwise it's 2 inches in, 1 1/4 inches down. Nice and centered. And I'm going to mark it with my pen. That 1-inch line. Take the tape off of this. And then that top fold, you want to line up with that line and stick it down. Just like that. One and a quarter. Did I do that wrong? Oh my gosh, I did. I did 2 1/4. Should be 1 1/4. This one's 1 1/4. This one's too far down. 1 1/4, Brandy. 1 1/4, not 2 1/4. 1 1/4. That looked like it was way too far down. There we go. Okay, and then just double check that it is definitely centered. Not quite centered. I'm going to smooth it over a little bit. Good. This vinyl does not like to stick to my double-sided tape. Holy. Okay. And I've kept my left zipper foot on because we're going to stitch across here, up, get as close as we can to the hardware, and back down, making sure that we're catching all the layers down there, which we will for both of them. Okay. Look, my tape is not sticking. Okay, good enough. We'll do this one first. Then you can pull your strands along and tie them off. I'm just going to back stitch because just along this bottom part here because my vinyl is not wanting to stick with my double-sided tape. So I just want to get this as secure as I can until I'm done. Okay. So 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Sure, I'm recording. I am. Okay, get as close as you can to your hardware without hitting your hardware. Pivot, and you can see how having that zipper foot on there gets nice and close to the hardware. Now once you got in here, you will want to get a scrap of something to be able to put under your walking foot. You might need a hump jumper too. Kind of works as that. I'm going to make sure my raw edges, my folders are pushed right in underneath there, so I'm catching them. I'm trying to squeeze out. I don't want them to. Get in there. Get in there. Okay. And this is just to protect my vinyl and my hardware from being scraped up by my walking foot. Get back in there. There we go. Finish it off and do the same with the other one. Looks like, I don't know if you can see my stitching there, it looks like that. Yeah, this vinyl really does not like to stick with the double-sided tape. So this is vinyl I picked up in Indonesia, but it's a little bit thick. Just make sure it's tucking under there. Under there. There we go. Nice and close to the hardware. Protect the hardware. Get in there. There we go. My folds just don't want to stay nice and even, so I'm just poking them in. Okay, so that's done. So I'm going to quickly just kind of erase my pen marks so I don't forget later. I just use wet ones. And I am going to install a rivet right in the middle of this box on both of them. Also backing with pieces of Duckable Heavy, of course. Everything out of the way. Where's my Duckable Heavy pieces? I'm going to actually use my press that has my hole cutter on it. I don't use it very often. I'm not very good at lining it up, but because it would be hard to go in with my hand punch, I'm going to just try to use this. Yep, that did a good job. Punch my holes. I honestly always forget I have that cutting tool there. Oops, I need it to do these too. I will punch my holes. Oops. And install my rivet. Get in there. There we go. Touch that one in a moment. and set those in place. And now we come finally to putting the exterior together. So, that's what we want to do. We are going to take our side panel, and I'm going to do it on this side first. I'm going to take it and put it right sides together. Now you're going to see that the side panel goes longer than the bottom, and that is because this folds up. See, that looks like it's part of the bottom, folds up and it becomes part of the bag. So the front of the bag. So this piece should be longer. It should come into the bottom part once it's all laid out. Okay, so put that in place. And I'm going to take the other one and do the same on the opposite side. And we'll do the rest of this part at the machine for when we attach this side as well. We'll just stay at the machine, put this on. Again, it will be longer, that's okay. Okay, and then we're going to sew down these sides with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, stopping at that 3/8 box that we cut out right at the top and backstitch. All right, let's clean this up a little bit. So we're going to put our standard foot back onto our machine. We don't need that zipper foot on right now. So good feet to have for a machine are both zipper feet and your standard foot. The other feet are a lot of fun, but these are the ones that I use mostly. Okay. So 3/8 of an inch. Some of the other side, but we'll be going from the bottom up. And after this, I'm going to show you a trick here so we can lay these seams flat. Okay, so to lay these seams flat, what I'm going to do is within the seam allowance, almost to where, you know, when we cut away our foam, I'm going to just make a little snip. I'm trying to do that left-handed. I'll show you in a sec. Just within the seam allowance. So can you see that? Just like so. On both sides. Just within the seam, inch or so down. And what that is going to let us do is we can now open up that seam within that inch, like so, to lay it flat. And we are going to baste that seam open on both sides. And that is just going to help us reduce that bulk when we go to top stitch this and sew it together. So go ahead and baste those, just that little section, keeping those seams open. That's one side. Just with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance or so. And that is what that looks like. Double check that your stitches don't look stressed out. If they do look stressed out, mine do a little bit, so I'm actually going to go in along that seam, not where we just flared it open, but on the other seams. I'm going to go in with another row of stitching, an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance into the seam away from the last stitching. Oh my goodness, the dogs are happy about something. And what that does is just strengthens that seam up, and then your stitches won't have that laddered effect if your vinyl is too thick or wet for you. I don't always have to do it, but I am using a thicker vinyl. Oh my gosh, somebody must be home. The dogs are so excited. Just like that. You hear Dexter's little owns. They're adorable. Little, he is an 85-pound dog, but he's a puppy still. Okay. That looks better. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we have to bring the other side up to the other side. So we will not be doing anything with this bottom section here. We are only doing the sides. We will be dealing with the bottom after at the table. So bring it up and stitch the other sides the exact same way. We're going to open up that seam the exact same way. So we'll do one side first, and then we'll do the other side. This side's a little more awkward to do, just because we have the bag almost all together. Just go with it. Easiest to sew it with the body of the bag against the table of the machine. I'll show you what this looks like, because it kind of, see how it kind of pops inside like that? That's okay. There's going to be a handy trick for us to do the bottom. It's really cool. So I'm just going to kind of flatten it out like this, and then sew it up at 3/8, starting again. This one's starting from the bottom on this side, anyways, depending which side you're starting with. I apologize for the dogs. They're probably going to be barking for a moment. I think Dave might be working on my car because we're having that car issue. Okay, I'm going to cut into that seam to open up that seam at the top, and then go in and top stitch, and then go ahead and put in that extra row of stitching, just like so. Place that in place. This is a little more awkward too, because we are working in like this, but it's not hard. And trust me, you'll thank me later. It just makes top stitching better, having the foam out of those sections. Okay, and now I can go and do my second row of strengthening stitches if you need to do it. Oopsies, come here, Mr. Thread. It's nothing worse than when your stitches show, so I always check it. And it's always different with every single bag, depending. And do the same with the final side. I know it seems really weird with the bottom right now, just trust the process. It's genius how she does this. It's so much fun. Well, I guess not fun, but it's really cool how it comes together. Okay. Uh-oh. Dogs are getting in trouble. Brady's yelling at them. Then just kind of flatten the bag out. And go down to that 3/8 cutout. I don't think this part is in the pattern. This is just something I always do with my top seams to reduce the bulk. So open up that seam. Baste it in place. This one's the most awkward one to baste in place. So we got the whole bag already pretty much formed. And then go back in with the strengthening stitch. So why I do that first is because I just do the strengthening stitch from where the snip is down. Otherwise it gets too hard to cut into that seam and lay it flat, which kind of makes it purpose of doing that obsolete because you can't cut as far into the seam. Okay. Back to the table. So many string threads. Okay. All right, so this is what it looks like. Now we got to do these sides. Now this is where some magic happens. So see when we lay this flat, you can see where our little, can you see that? See where the little cutout was for our side? You are going to follow that line and cut right to, just right to where that is, like a 3/8 of an inch in on the main panel. So like right there, see? So we did it on the main panel, followed the line within that cutout at that 3/8 of an inch. And we want to do that on all sides. So just use that cutout as a guide. You're just doing that one little slit on all sides. And then what that's going to do is, let me get this one done too. Now, watch this. Because we have those slits on the exterior, see right there? When we pop this out, we have two straight edges. Whoops. Watch how perfectly, look at that, goes together. So we got the slit there, we got the 3/8 of a thing here, and then we have a perfectly straight line to sew across. So now all we have to make sure is that we're starting and stopping where the stitching was here at that 3/8 of an inch mark. Make sure it's nice and even, and go all the way across to the stitching on the other side for both sides. Easy, hey? Isn't that amazing? So same with the side. See how it all flares out? Makes a nice straight edge to connect those together. And it should give us a nice Y-seam type, I think it's called a Y-seam type corner. So let's go ahead, and then we're going to go like this. We're going to sew from one side across to the other. Of course, Dexter's barking. Okay. So kind of press this flat ish. Sure my seam's going to be good. And we want to make sure that we start right where our stitching ended at this last on the side there. So very important that gets in there, because if the stitches don't match up, we could have a hole in that corner. So should line up pretty perfect. Oopsies. Just make sure you're starting right at that part. Okay. You kind of push it flat. Back stitch. And go across to the opposite side, stopping where our side stitching ended as well. And I'm going to go through with second row stitching. So I'm going to feel in first to make sure. You can see on this side, see how my stitching all matches up all the way around? That's what we want. You can also feel on the inside, make sure there's no holes in those corners. They feel good. I'm going to do my second row of security stitching. Do that if you need to, 1/8 of an inch away. And the other side too. Said mine looks a little awkward because I'm using super thick vinyl, so it's kind of a little harder to maneuver because it doesn't want to bend. Make sure my needle's going down where the side stitching ended. And across. And ending where my stitching was. And take a look to make sure you can see it all matches up and all matches up. Feel inside, feels good. And I'm going to do my second row stitching. Okay. Okay, so see, isn't it amazing? Now it's all square when it was looking like it was round. Now we can go ahead and we can turn this right side out. This should be fun with this vinyl. Wish me luck. This vinyl is so thick. This vinyl that I'm using definitely isn't domestic machine friendly. I'll tell you that right now. Okay. Might help to undo that. Turn lock. Oh my gosh, this vinyl. Vinyl is gorgeous, but it is stiff. Wow. She's a thick one. Poke out those corners. You should see. So you have that poked out. Look at that corner. Perfect. No holes in the corners. Double check to make sure everything was caught as you're pushing out your seams. Mine were. Oh my gosh, Dexter. Gotta love recording live. And make sure everything was caught. Sure, look how good those corners look. Magic. So there's the inside part. And that is the exterior. Complete. Now we get to do the lining, which is super fast. Okay, so now we're going to do our zipper panel. So I like to take my zipper panel and make my zipper tape about double what the panel is, so I have lots to work with. I'll be putting my pull on later, like I always do. I do my zipper panel slightly different than she does, so feel free to follow her way. It's not too different, just a little bit different. It's just my preferred way of doing it. Okay, so you have your zipper tape. You do not need your pull on it right now. It's just easier to work without the pull, but to line up the tape nicely to put the pull on later, this is a trick I like to do. So take your zipper tape, flip it wrong side up, and on the right hand side, you are going to take a pen that does not disappear and measure up a nice straight edge of 1 inch. So when you go to put your zipper pull on, you know that that line has to line up, and then your zipper pull will be on perfectly straight. Okay, it's just a 1 inch line, and that's just to guide it, so you know right at that point when you put your zipper pull on that it will be on straight. But we're not putting the zipper pull on just yet. Okay, right side forward, up again, opposite end from the line we just drew. We're going to take our zipper tape apart slightly, and we've done this many times. You're going to fold this down kind of like in a loop like this and fold it upon itself, putting that folded line kind of right up against the teeth like so, in that angle, and secure with a pin like so. Same with the opposite side, and you want it to be as close and even as it possibly can to that opposite side. So like that. And then we're going to go ahead and baste those in place. My stitching gets messier and messier as we go. Okay, so just the baste to hold that zipper tape in place. One side done. Come on, hands. There we go. Hands do not want to work. All right, there we go. Okay, so it's all basted in place. You can take those pins out. You can trim off the excess little wingy things here, nice and even. And then you can go ahead and you can pull that tape apart. Okay, so now we are going to take our zipper panel exteriors and linings, and on the wrong sides we are going to draw a 3/4 of an inch line in from each side on all 4. Oops. So on the wrong sides. I think it said that already. Oh my gosh, Brandy. I can't draw a line for the life of me today. Can I? Try this one. So I am going to use a double-sided tape for this. Where's my tape? So we're going to fold all of these short ends into that line that we just drew for all 4. I just find it a lot easier. If you're using cotton, you can of course press it, but I know, just find it a lot easier to use the tape. always easier to use tape for doing zipper panels too. So if your machine is sensitive to tape, try Dritz Wash Away Wonder Tape, or make sure you have a little alcohol swab or something, and then if you keep your needle free of the glue, just kind of wipe it down after every seam that you've sewn through tape. It'll make it so it doesn't come up so much. So now we're going to fold all of those sides down. I guess you could definitely use clips and clip it on each side if you wanted as well. Now what's important here is that these all end up being pretty much the same length. So we're going to make sure, oopsies, as we do that. Those two are the same. Very important that they're all the same. You can adjust the amount that we are folding into if one seems longer or shorter than the other due to cutting error or what have you. Like, see how this one is a little bit longer? Look at that. I got to make it so it's all the same size. So I'm just going to take this one and I'm going to fold it in just a little bit more. I could have just drawn that line wrong too, until they all end up being the same. So now that's the same. See how this vinyl does not like the tape? Grr. Oops, that's not straight. How do we do? Good enough. Okay. Okay, so we're going to take the lining ones, and on the right sides, on one of them, we are going to measure in with our erasable pen 1/4 of an inch from the left on one side, and on the opposite one, we're going to do a 1/4 of an inch from the right side. Now I'm going to use tape again. You can definitely use clips if you prefer. And from that 1/4 of an inch line all the way to the end, I'm going to put my tape down. Oopsies. I just find the tape and using a zipper foot at this point helps get a nice and even and straight zipper. So again, starting at that 1/4 of an inch over, so this first 1/4 of an inch does not have any tape. Same with this one, the 1/4 of an inch is over here, so this one can go right to the end. Okay, so these are right side up. We're also going to take our zipper tape right side up. So the curvy side of our zipper tape will go right and line up with the 1/4 of an inch line that we just drew. So it's going to look like these are going in opposite directions, which is exactly what we want. Make sure your tape is right side up and make sure your lining piece is right side up. And stick that down with the curvy side going at that 1/4 of an inch mark. Right at that line and stick it down, both pieces right side up. Okay, so that's one. Same with the other one, except for the curvy side is the opposite direction. My family's having too much fun upstairs. I hear them laughing. Okay, starting at that 1/4 of an inch mark and sticking it down. And then just double check when you put these like so, that see how the curvy marks are lining up when they're facing each other like that? That is exactly what we want. Okay, now we're going to take our exterior pieces, both right side up. And I'm going to put some tape on them along one long edge. Along the other long edge, you can go all the way across. Then we're going to take these and we're going to put them right sides together with our lining and our zipper piece, making sure they're nice and even with each other, lining up and sandwiching that zipper tape. Now, see how my lining piece is bigger than my exterior piece? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to unstick that lining piece. Just bring it in a little bit more. Actually, we're going to wait. We'll see if it's the, we'll see which piece is shortest. I might have to bring this one out. We'll do this one first and see if it matches up. And then we can adjust. We just need them to be the exact same size. Come on. So I can see my lining piece on this one is slightly bigger. So it's easiest to bring it in from the tail side and line it up. So I'm going to have to redo this one here because I'm not lining up at that zipper part, the curvy part, and we want that 1/4 inch to stay the same. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put them again together. And then if I need to adjust from the tail side, I can adjust from the tail side, which I will have to do. So you see how the lining is just that slightly bit longer. So from the tail side, I'm just going to pull up my tape and then make it match up with that exterior piece. So everything lines up perfectly on both. Double check. Perfect. Then we're going to put on our zipper foot and we're going to sew across there with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance for both of them. Okay, so now we are going to change into our right side zipper foot. See, it takes no time to change your feed out on an industrial. It's even faster on a domestic. I remember my domestic, especially my Elna, so fast to change out that zipper foot. Okay, so making sure again that everything is lined up good. And we're going to go down there with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, nice and straight. But you don't want to sew past your zipper panel. Just go right to the end of that. You don't want your thread to show into your zipper tail. That's one done. And the other one again. Making sure you're not sewing into that zipper tail. You're only doing it at where the panel meets. Seam allowance went off a little bit there. I'm going to go in and correct that a little bit. I went a little off kilter. Easy ones. There we go. All right. All right, so that's now what we want to do is we want to press these wrong sides together. Now because my vinyl is, you can finger press it. I like to use double-sided tape because you know me. You definitely don't have to. You could probably press it if you're not using something that is melting, but this just helps me get those seams nice and tight. So I'm just putting it within those seam allowances. Come on. There we go. I'm going to press it nice and tight away from the zipper teeth. Just like so. Same with the lining side, bringing them wrong sides together. Bringing them nice and tight, away from those zipper teeth. You can see my lining pieces were cut a little uneven. That is okay. Make sure that the sides all line up perfectly. Use some clips to hold that in place, as well as along that bottom raw edge. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim off my excess lining here along the bottom and then hold together with clips. So this is what we got. You can see how nice and straight our zipper is from using that zipper foot. Do the same with the other one. Oh, Dave and Brady just left, so Coco may bark for a moment until they pull out of the driveway. It's snowing here. Holy moly. I guess it is December. It should be snowing. Just going to sing us a song. Okay, again, making sure that these sides all match up. I'm actually going to trim off some of this thread here. Don't want that poking out. And make sure the curves, these edges here match up. These ones here. Make sure the curved sides or the folded undersides are nice and even. And again, you can tell I had bad cutting along my lining, so I'll just trim that up even with the raw edge of the exterior and clip in place. Oh, cocoa beans. Okay, so again, we're just going to double check that everything looks nice and even. You can tell that when these are going to be together, everything is perfectly even. Our curvy sides are matching up, so we're good to go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start, we want to baste this bottom and we want to top stitch the two short side, or this short side across this short side, and then finish off for both. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. I like to start halfway across the bottom with the baste. Put it to top stitching length, back stitch. Probably could have switched into my standard foot at this point, but I forgot. So make sure you're catching both layers, the lining and the exterior when you're coming up the seam. You may need a hump jumper here depending on your machine and the thickness of the materials you're using. This is the thickest part right where we're at. Top stitch across the zipper. Sure everything is staying nice and even. Make sure you're getting all layers. That's why it was important that they were even. And across the bottom. Okay, before I do my next one, I'm going to change into my standard foot just because it grabs, the walking foot grabs onto the material better rather than what it was doing. Okay. Okay, so they are both done. Make sure all layers got caught. I got some extra threads hanging out here. Let's trim those off. Come on. They look good. Now what we want to do is we want to find the centers of the raw sides. So fold these in half, matching up your zipper panel. Do your snip in the center right on that raw edge for both. And then we're going to do another check just to make sure that that center snip is nice and centered. So I just put my center snips together and make sure it all lines up good. And you can see everything is perfect. So now what we want to do is, we've already finished our aligning panels here. This was homework after second class. You've left an opening in the bottom of your zipper. You've done your lining pockets like you like. I do mine different than the designer did. This is how I do all of mine. So again, do it as per what you like. This is what I like. And what we're going to do is we're going to start with the one that you want for your back panel. So this is the one that's going to be at the back side of my bag. I've already snipped my top and bottom centers. And what we want to do is, so this is right side up, and we want to take our zipper panel right side up with the curvy side going to the left. So this is the back of your bag, right side up, right side up. You're going to line up that center and clip it in place. So this whole zipper panel part, if you guys are looking for it, is page 33, and we are now on page 35 of the pattern. Dexter says hi. I'm sorry. Okay, so that one is clipped in place. Now we're going to take the opposite side, which is the front of the bag. You have your top and bottom centers snipped. You're going to take the other zipper panel, also right side up, but now the curvy side is going to the right, the opposite direction. Match up that center. Again, right side up, both parts, and clip it in place. Now before we move ahead, I'm going to put these, because this is how our zipper is going to be laying. I'm going to line up our centers just to make sure everything is centered and that our zipper panels are lining up. And they do. So now you want to grab, where are they? What were these ones called? These are your upper interior top panels, which was pattern piece F. So we want to find our top and bottom centers of these. So fold them in half. Do your snips or your marks. Same with the opposite one. We're very close to being done. You have no idea. We're almost done. The lining part of this one goes so fast. Okay, so what we want to do is take those top panels, bring them right sides together with that lining panel, match up that center, and add it into the clips, sandwiching that zipper panel in between it and the lining panel. All the way to the end. Make sure your tails of your zippers are down. You don't want to catch the tails, you just want to catch that zipper panel. Same with the opposite one. Again, right sides together, match up that center. There are plow trucks going down the street right now. That's what Coco is freaking out about. So I'm going to have to check our seam allowance. Again, make sure your tail is down and out of the way. We don't want to be sewing through that tail at all. We need it to remain free and clear. And our seam allowance is, let me double check, 3/8 of an inch. So what we're going to do at the machine is we're going to sew across here for both with 3/8 of an inch. We're going to flip this up with our seam pointing towards the top panel and top stitch. Actually, this whole thing will come up, including the zipper panel like this once it's sewn. So actually the seam is going towards the bottom. That was my mistake. So again, we're going to sew across here. We're going to flip this panel up, bringing that seam allowance to point down towards the bottom. And then we're going to top stitch that seam in place through the lining panel. So the zipper panel and everything will face up. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so I'm going to chain sew these babies together. And make sure your tail is down and out of the way. You don't want to be sewing through that tail. I'm going to chain stitch these so I don't have to break my thread. Again, making sure my tail is out of the way. Back stitch when I start the new piece. Before I top stitch these, I'm just going to double check to make sure I have enough thread, because there's nothing worse than top stitching when you're almost out of thread. I should have just enough to top stitch. Okay. Hate it when you're top stitching and then your bobbin runs out. It's the worst place for it to do that. Okay, so again, we're going to push this up. We're going to make the top panel as well as your zipper panel. So you're going to see the wrong side of your zipper panel. And we are going to top stitch with that seam pointing down through the lining panel. Pull that seam nice and tight. One done, do the same with the opposite side. Done. Okay, so now that that's done, oops, I got some stray threads happening here. I'll get that all cleaned up. Now what we want to do is we want to put these right sides together. I don't know what's going on with Dexter. I think he's barking at the cat. Sorry. You're going to line up these seams so we have a nice continuous line. So that's where I like to start, is lining up where the seam is for where the lining panel starts and the top panel starts. So that's nice and even. And we are not clipping the bottom. We're going to leave the bottom and the box corners unsewn for now. We will finish those up once we have the exterior and the lining put together. We'll be finishing it up through the zipper pocket. Gives us a nice an easy turn, especially when you're using foam. Actually, Decavol too, because Decavol, if you manipulate it too much, it pulls away from the material. So leaving the bottom fully open just makes it a really easy turn that does not disrupt the exterior assembly too much with that interfacing. So line up this one on the opposite side, same thing. And clip it in place all the way down. Oopsies. Now we don't want to have a lining that is going to droop inside the bag, so we are going to do some creative stitching here. So we have to start at the top with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So our circumference along the top of the lining is the same circumference as the exterior bag. So we're going to start with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance at the top here until we get about, I don't know, an inch or so below where that top panel was. And then we're going to slowly branch out and end at a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So that's going to make the bottom of the bag slightly smaller than the bottom of the exterior bag, which will give us a tighter fit. So same with on this side to about here. We're going to go 3/8 of an inch and then branch out to 5/8 of an inch along the bottom. So let's go ahead and do that. We're so close. Okay, so again, starting at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance at the top. And then when we get about 2.5 inches or so down, we're going to start making our seam wider to 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Same with the opposite side, except for I'm starting at the bottom, so I'm going to start at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then when I get to about 2 or 3 inches from the top, I'm going to branch in to 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure your tail's out of the way. Ooh, I almost caught it in that seam. That would have been bad. And then just like we did with the exterior, so making sure these are lining up and they line up perfectly. But just like we did with the exterior, I want to baste my side seams open. So I'm going to cut down about 1 inch within that seam allowance, close to the stitching without cutting the stitching. And I'm going to open up that seam and I'm going to baste it. I'm also going to do the same with the opposite side. This is just what I like to do. I mean, you can open those seams up as well as you're sewing. I just find it's nice when they're already in place and you don't have to worry about it. So this just enables you to do it before. And it takes like no time, just takes a little bit of extra time. But I think it just helps. One less thing you have to concentrate on when you're actually sewing them together. Okay, so baste that in place. Same with the other side. Again, this is a Brandy thing. You don't have to do this. I just find it helps me. See? So my side, it's all in place. Okay, so this is what we got. Now we can trim our extra seam allowance here where we went a little bit wide. Just trim it to about 3/8 to just below where our panel, our top panel was. Okay, now we're going to take our exterior. I gotta get some more clips. One sec here. We're gonna put it all together now. Yay! Okay, so I have the front of my bag facing me. I have the front of my lining facing me, making sure that my zippers are going to the left. And we are going to put the exterior into the lining, right sides together. Now it will be tighter along the bottom because remember we did make that seam a little bit smaller. But you can see how easy this is going to turn. So make sure your tails are tucked in. You want to make sure your zipper panel is tucked in. So tuck those in. And we want to match up our exterior front and back centers first. Again, tucking in your zipper panel so it's down and out of the way from your lining. And same with your zipper tails, down and out of the way. There's my exterior center. And match up those center snips that we did on our exteriors and our linings. Use lots of clips. You don't want this to slip. You want it to stay nice and centered. So don't be a stranger of clips like me. Just use tons like I do, trust me. Okay, so once you got a couple in that front panel, or in that one side, you're going to do the same with the other side. Make sure your zipper panel is poking down and your zipper tail is tucked in between the two. Right at this, go ahead and match up that center mark of the opposite side here. Secure with a few clips. Make sure your hardware is pointing down as well, because you don't want to accidentally run over that with your needle and break a needle, or to accidentally sew it into the seam. That would be bad too. Okay, once you got those, now we're going to match up our side. So we have our center snip on our exterior side, and then we have where we flared open our center seam on the lining. We're going to match those up and clip them in place. Flip it around and do the same with the other, making sure your tails are out of the way, your zipper panel's still down, your hardware's down. Double check all of that. Match up the other side centers. This is where it's nice that we have those seams already basted in place open. Otherwise we would have to be worrying about them not being open and getting that seam really thick, and they're going to stay where we need them to now. Okay. Okay, now what we're going to do, again, my vinyl is very thick, is in between those quarter sections, you're going to evenly distribute that fabric and clip it all in place. Find it easier to work in quarter sections to make sure your fabric is nice and even, and then you know everything is nice and centered. And it should fit perfectly. Make sure it's all, you can kind of smooth it out, make sure there's no nips or tucks. You don't want to have a pleat in this top area. Move to the next section. And see, even here where we have our seams flared open, we're not worrying about them becoming too bulky in any area because we've already taken care of that. Next section. And the last section. Again, everything is down and out of the way. Just doing a last feel to make sure. Okay, so now I've already threaded my cylinder arm, as that is the machine I like to finish my bags on, but I will explain how I would have done this if I was doing it on a flat. So if I was on a flatbed, I would put it down like this, and I would sew with my 3/8 of allowance, seam allowance from the inside, moving it around. If you have a cylinder arm like me or a free arm, we're going to sew around with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around the outside. So let's take it over to my Tommy machine and we will get that going. Alrighty. So I will be sewing this twice. I'm going to do my main seam, and then I'm going to go back in and do a strengthening seam just because my vinyl is thick. Dexter's saying hi again. He's very talkative today. And here we go. I don't go super fast. I want to make sure that we're staying nice and even and that I'm catching both layers and that nothing is slipping. Oh my goodness, Mr. Dexter. That sounds like he wants to play with Coco, but Coco doesn't want to play with him, so he's just barking at her head, I think. Or he wants to play with the cat, and the cat doesn't want to play with him. That sounds like that kind of bark. Almost there. Yeah, I hear Coco growling at him. Oh my. I'm home alone, so there's not much I can do. Well, Riley's home, but he's in the shower. But there's not much I can do. I'm kind of feeling to make sure my hardware's out of the way. I have sewn through hardware before, trust me. It will break your machine. Okay, so that's one round. So I'm just going to kind of look and make sure it caught everywhere evenly. Make sure my seam is nice and even all the way around. Just kind of eyeball it and see, make sure it was all caught. Same with the exterior, and we were. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do, again, you don't have to do this. It all depends on the materials you use. My vinyl is super thick. So I'm just going to go in 1/8 of an inch beside that seam that stitching that I just did within the seam, and just do a strengthening line just so my stitches don't look stressed out, and then you won't be able to see the stitches through the seam. Okay, let's go turn this baby out. All right, so this is why we leave the bottom open. Watch how easy this is going to be to turn out. Mine may be a little harder because it's really thick vinyl, but still not bad. Ta-da! Okay, got a stray thread there. Get that out of there. Okay, let's get turned out. Give that seam, now I can see doing a second row stitching helped. I don't have any ladder stitches happen there. Give that seam a pull. Make sure everything was caught and there's no holes. And once you're satisfied with that, go ahead and stuff the lining into the bag. Now remember, we have that top seam that top panel seam. So that is going to end up being inside the bag too, just like that. So you have your panel and then your lining top panel. Make sure as you're pressing out that seam that you're pulling your lining down nice and tight, and then finger press the seam into place and then secure it with clips all the way around to prepare for top stitching. You just want to make sure that you don't have any lining stuck up and in behind there. That's why I'm pulling it down. Looks good. Roll those seams in between your fingers to make sure they're nice and tight. I just love this pattern so very much. So the final construction is not hard. It's just like most bags, actually. It's really not that different. The exterior is a little more work, but it gives such an amazing bag. Like, I'm making one of these for myself in leather. I am in love with it. I think this is probably one of the favorite bags that I have made all year, is this style of bag. And I made a lot of great bags, but this one, I don't know. It's my favorite. My current favorite anyways. So I must mention as we're doing this, now if you are on a flatbed, you may want to have your bag turned inside out. So you're top stitching your exterior from the inside of the bag. That would make things easier, and then turning the bag right side out. Again, I'm on a cylinder arm, or if you're on a free arm, you're going to be doing it from here. You can also do it from the lining side if you wanted to, if you know your bobbin is really good. Or turn the bag inside out, so when you're stitching from the inside, the exterior is on the inside. When I used to do it on my flatbed, I learned to turn the bag inside out. That made it a lot easier to get a nice, because I'm pretty exterior top seam, or top stitch. Bye, Riley. Kid is going to work. Then I'm officially home alone until Brady and Dave get back from their Christmas shopping. You can see I'm using a lot of clips again to hold all my seams in place. And you want to make sure your zipper panel stays down so you're not going to be top stitching through it by accident. Gosh, I chose the thickest vinyl I think I could. Okay, then we're going to go ahead and we are going to take this to my cylinder arm or to your flatbed or whatever machine you are on and top stitch all the way around. You want to make sure you're not sewing through your tails and your zipper panel. I'm going to do quite a long top stitch length because of the thickness of my vinyl. Okay. Again, make sure your zipper panel is out of the way. You definitely don't want to accidentally sew through that. You will cry. And this is why we took the foam out of those corners right in here, because that makes it so these seams are not as thick. Okay. Again, be very aware where your zipper panel is. Now you can go top stitch this with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You see here I'm doing mine with a 1/4 of an inch, and the only reason I'm doing that is because my vinyl is so thick. You can see how thick it is here. So if I did an 1/8 of an inch here, I'd be scared that I would fall off or not catch that underside. So because I'm using thick vinyl, I'm going in with a 1/4 of an inch. And you'll see I'm barely going to be able to clear those connectors, but I do. But yeah, that's the only reason why I'm going in with a thicker top stitch, is because of the thickness of my vinyl. Let me double check if it's nice on the underside. And it is perfect. This machine does amazing top stitching. It's just even nicer than my 1541. My 1341 just has, its tension is always good, I find. My 1541, it's fickle. I don't know if that's just my machine or every machine, but again, I'm kind of feeling under here to make sure my zipper panel and my zipper tails are out of the way. I don't want to sew through those. Almost halfway. So you can see here, if we hadn't cut out of that corner the foam, you probably would have needed a hump jumper. Or it may have even been too thick. But even with this thick vinyl, I didn't need a hump jumper because I cut that foam out of those corners. You can see I am not fast at all. I take it nice and slow so I can get a nice and even top stitch, and I have a little more control. Almost there. Done. That part. Still got to close up the lining super fast and then just add the finishing touches. Just snip all this. Alrighty. Okay. See how that looks. I'm not putting my zipper pull on just yet. I'm just going to kind of take a look. You can see everything is going to line up perfect. How good that top stitching looks. It looks good on the opposite side. I caught everything. Looks good. Once you're happy with that, now we can go ahead and we can close up the lining. So you're going to open up that zipper pocket and you're going to pull out the zipper pocket lining that we left an opening in the bottom. Okay, then you're going to reach in through there and you're going to grab the entirety of the lining bottom and pull it through that zipper pocket. Now don't worry about the box corners yet. We just want to match up the centers of the bottoms of the straight edge and clip that in place. So find that center and the center of the opposite side and match them up and clip them in place. Okay, and then we're going to sew across that with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, because if you remember, we did the bottom of our bag slightly smaller than the rest. So just along that straight edge, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm just going to do this all on the cylinder arm because I just don't want to rethread my other machine. So let's put it down to a sewing length, a stitch, and 5/8 of an inch. Shoot a back stitch. That might be too small. Make sure you're pulling it straight so you're not getting any puckers. Okay, so that's done. Now we want to box these corners. So you're going to bring the side seam and that bottom seam together. You could trim that bottom seam if you wanted to. I'm not going to worry about it. And I'm just going to nest my seams there across that box corner. So nest the side seam and the bottom seam. We're going to clip the opposite side as well, and we'll do them both at the same time when we take it to the machine. So again, here's your box corner. I'll show you again. Kind of pull it apart, and then you see where this seam is and this seam is. Nest them together. You can open the seams up too. It's up to you. And then clip it in place, and then we will sew across those with the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance as well. Whoopsies, I slipped. Okay, so let's go do that. Okay. Strands out of the way. And if you're on an industrial, you have to make sure that you hold your threads when you get started. Otherwise, they get sucked down into the bobbin mechanism and it breaks the bobbin mechanism. I speak from experience. I did that my first 6 months of having my 1541 and had to get her repaired. I wanted to cry. One side done. And oh my gosh, Dexter. I think when this is done, I have to take him for a walk or something. He's got too much energy right now. A walk will do me good too. Okay, so that's done. And now what we're going to do is you're going to stuff that into the bag, that whole lining. And then, can you see this? We're going to take that pocket, we're going to fold in those raw edges, and we're going to clip those, and we're going to top stitch the pocket closed as well. And that'll be the last of the sewing. Super easy ways to make it so we can turn the bag with minimal effort. I'm game. almost caught, and it was. All right, so once you have that, put your pocket back into your pocket. Make sure everything is laying nice. Oh, she's so pretty. Gosh, I love this pattern so much, so much. All right. So look how tight that lining fits inside there. Isn't that perfect? So now what we're going to do is we need to put on our zipper pull. So I'm going to grab, I'll show you how I do mine. Where is it? We just kind of angle this up. Don't judge my messy floor. Okay, so I have just a fork that's on a vise. I'm putting it on my table here. You guys see that okay? My floor is so messy. Okay, I'm going to take my zipper pull. I'm going to put it so the wrong side of the zipper pull is up and put it in the middle of my two middle prongs. I'm going to take my zippers, so this is right side up. I'm going to flip it wrong side up, and that's where we see those lines that we drew. I'm going to put those into the zipper and pull it through. Now you can see my line is not matching up, so I know I don't want to zip it on anymore because it's not going to be straight. So that's why I draw the line, because then I don't have to zip it all the way up to know that it's not going to match. Oh, look, got it second try. So now my line matches up, and if I've put all my panels on nice and straight, they should come nice and even. Move this up again. It should come on perfectly straight. Just like that. Look at, see how perfect it is at that end there? Even on both sides. It's perfect. Then I'm going to take my tail, and I like to leave about, how much is that? Ouch. 3 or 4 inches or so. I'm going to trim my tape up just like that. Somewhere in there. I just eyeball it. I'm going to put my zipper end on there. Or if you're making your own zipper end, you can definitely go ahead and sew your zipper end onto that now. I have a metal zipper end, which I will install later. You're going to rivet your handles on. I said I'm going to do all that off camera. So you rivet your handles on, put on your zipper end, and then your bag is completely done. See, not hard at all. Amazing. Amazing. So that concludes Alexandra class. Thank you so much for understanding why the last couple classes had to be recorded as we ran out of time during the month due to circumstances beyond our control. But we got it done. Again, if you have any questions as you're finishing up your Alexandras, you feel free to message or email me. I am available for you to help you along. So yay! Be sure to post your finished Alexandras on my Facebook group so you can make it into the 2023 class movie, which I will probably have a deadline for January 31st, so I could get it up mid-February to show all of our makes for the whole year. Anyways, thank you everybody, and I will see you on the next one.